Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and I work in the programming department here at Vegas PBS. I'd like to thank you all so much for being here tonight, and I hope you enjoyed the screening. To see it again, you can tune in on Monday, March 22nd at 10 p.m. on Vegas PBS channel 10.1, or the film can be streamed on our website at vegaspbs.org through April 20th. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Valerie Taylor, our moderator for the Q&A portion of this evening. Dr. Valerie Taylor, please take it away.
Well, hello. Briefly going to introduce the other panelists who are here this evening. I'm just going to go in alpha order, and I'm going to start with Miss Ursela Garvin, who's a graduate of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, and also has a business education degree, I'm assuming from the same illustrious institution. She is a 15-year veteran educator and currently teaches robotics at Jim Bridger STEM Academy in Las Vegas. She serves as president for the Computer Science Teacher Association, Nevada Silver State, and she is the owner of STEMbotics Learning Center, which is a K-8 agricultural and robotics summer camp, as a national board certified teacher, and serves as a mentor for CCEA, NBCT, for middle school teacher leaders who are pursuing their NBCT certification. She was awarded the MCWIT Educator Honorable Mention Award for the 2021 school year. And Miranda Richardson joins us, and she is a graduate of Northwestern University in Chicago. Miranda focused her degree and career around technology and paving the way for others to enter into her beloved industry. Historically, Miranda has held both full-time and consulting roles, assisting the Vegas corporations in their product management and large-scale technology needs. She made the move to San Jose to ante up her career and growth, taking a global role with Microsoft. Miranda is a trailblazer in the diversity and inclusion space. As the external connections lead for the Blacks at Microsoft Worldwide Leadership Team, she is implementing programs that bring technology, exposure, and knowledge to our communities, paving the way for attendees to enter tech or catapult their careers in tech. And Dr. Crystal Oates followed with earning her doctorate of philosophy in educational measurement and statistics with a focus in program evaluation from the University of Iowa. While in graduate school, Dr. Oates had a fellowship with ACT Inc., where she engaged in college choice research focusing on college math. She has taught mathematics and statistics at both the high school and college level in Los Angeles, California, Iowa City, and here. Dr. Oates recently transitioned from the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine, where she worked as the accreditation coordinator and helped the school to successfully renew its accreditation. She is now a lecturer of mathematics at Nevada State College. Welcome. We are here to discuss an amazing film, Coded Bias. So with that, I'm just going to dive in and ask each of you to sort of share your immediate thoughts about the film when you saw it. I'll start with Dr. Crystal Oates.
Well, thank you for having me. The film was definitely eye-opening. It's, you know, the part that really stood out to me was the facial recognition and being able to determine if a person is like was it high risk or trustworthy or something like that. They use some kind of a scale. And what immediately kind of came to mind was the stop and frisk laws that they're trying to bring back that basically, you know, allows police to just, you know, without any probable cause or anything of that nature, be able to identify someone and just, you know, randomly search them for some kind of evidence to incriminate them. So, you know, with the AI, I think that's extremely, that could be extremely detrimental. And, you know, just we need people of color in those positions when these different types of technologies are being created, to be able to talk about these things and bring these things to light, because, you know, for some groups, this is not something that is on their mind. It's not even a thought. And so we need those voices in the room. And then just from a day-to-day, I mean, there are a lot of different things that stuck out in my mind when I watched this film. But I mean, just a random thing, I just thought about, you know, how I'm in a store and I can say, oh, you know, I like that shirt. And literally every time, every social media platform I log onto, the shirt is just broadcasted and immediately advertised. If I even search anything on Google, I'm always, if I go on YouTube, videos pertaining to that thing are always being suggested. So it's just, it's sometimes it's kind of like technology is moving you to think in a particular direction. And it could be very dangerous, because it kind of can be very manipulative, to where you think that your thoughts are original, but no, it's actually when you're being inundated with videos, with images, really your thoughts are being manipulated. And that could even go so far as to make you care about certain causes or feel strongly about things that you wouldn't necessarily feel strongly about. So those are just my immediate thoughts.
A lot, but I think you capture the sentiment of at least me, but I can say probably many of the viewers too. So I'm going to bounce it to Miss Miranda. Would you like to share your initial thoughts on the film and how you're seeing it play in or throughout your industry?
Absolutely. It was very interesting, and it was alarming. I agree. It was alarming in the sense of, I've been in technology over 20 years. The sentiment or the element of AI has been present, even when it unbeknownst to us, or it not being as blatant. We watched the movie with Will Smith around AI. We watched the Bruce Willis movie about a technical, a robot being our actual person, but we're in a completely different location. So you see those things in a movie that's supposedly not a reality. However, and then watching the documentary and seeing how much AI has advanced, and to see how much it is impacting the person that just doesn't know about it, and the persons that do know about it, that are driving where the growth of this goes, driving what kind of responsible AI is in place. But seeing how far this is going really concerns me of who is going to put a halt, who is going to throw up the warning signs and make the larger businesses, tech companies, smaller tech companies that are startups and are also able to build off of the same code groundwork to implement the same type of intrusive behavior behind code. Something that most people just don't have an idea about, because it's not something we think we have to worry about. But this documentary definitely brings to the forefront when we're talking about the healthcare industry. I almost hollered out loud in a sense of, oh my goodness, this could potentially drive my loan. This could potentially drive my healthcare. This can potentially drive if I get a job. Those type of things, and saying the lack of empathy, the lack of a personal touch will exist potentially in the future for everyone in their decision making is is really, truly concerning. And my thought processes, especially over the past year to this date, is, okay, this is an issue. What do we need to do? Who is the person people or entities that have the power to make a difference? And how can we broader socialize and make those groups of a broader awareness as well, so that we can do something about this in the everyday lives of a person? So I thinking of a full gamut of a process. It's here. It's not something I believe we can stop. It is something that absolutely has value. It is absolutely the thought process of gathering information, gathering data for growth or knowledge is needed. This is how we've gotten to so many great discoveries around health, around living, et cetera. However, going back to how do we govern that, and what do we do to make sure there is a more non-biased or lessen the implied bias from what these decisions that are being made, where it comes from the very core of its beginning.
A lot to think about, especially with your expertise in technology. Ms. Ursula, you are bringing up the next generation of coders. So what ran through your mind when you saw the film? And do you want to sort of add in some thoughts maybe about where you can take that next generation?
Yeah, those were my immediate thoughts. So when we got to the section of the documentary where they were in the UK and the young man was walking by the bus and he covered his face, and immediately the police like swarmed him, like, why are you covering your face? If you're not guilty, why are you covering your face? So I thought about how can I bring awareness to this AI and facial recognition within my classroom, as well as prepare my students to be those ethical coders, right, that are going to prevent some of this algorithm biases that we're seeing right now. So I just thought about bringing awareness to in my classes. What lesson plans can I do? What community partners do I already have? And what resources I can provide for my students to actually ensure that they are a piece of the positive solution when we're talking about AI and facial recognition.
Wow. Well, I will say, as an African-American studies professor and as a gender studies professor, I was amazed at the talent of those that are leading the fight. I was happy to see so many women of color who have written about, who've studied, who are continuing to advocate on behalf of all communities, but especially communities of color and women in this particular field. So that was my initial, like, yes, so horrified that they need to do this, but so glad they are. Also a little concerned since such a small number of women are in technology, and then, dig deeper into Black and Latinx women in that number, that the responsibility has yet again fallen on the shoulders of women of color to raise the alarm about something that has such major implications. So those were a little of my thoughts. I also thought that it was a very well done documentary. It kept my attention, and which is amazing. The topic, of course, was very engaging, but the way that the storyline played out, I thought was really good, right? Even the back and forth in the comparisons between the UK, Hong Kong, China, and here. And I do want to, at some point, bring up the here in Las Vegas and what the implications are in this unique space where we are very heavily surveilled. We're along the lines of London when people think of cameras everywhere. So that is just something I think we can maybe address a little later, but I did want to plant that seed that we're in a very unique space. So with that, I want to ask the next question, I think, which is, if you were thinking about how to make a change in your daily activities, one of you teaches middle school, one of you is frontline technology, and one of you is teaching mathematics to the next generation of scholars. What would you say about AI, knowing the history and where it's come from based on what was said in the film? A very small number of looked like white men sort of said, chess is a good way for us to go. So it's not taking into account different types of quote unquote intelligence, knowledge, experience. What would you say, and how would you maybe address it in your day-to-day activities, your work, your ability to sort of be an advocate in your space where you are? And I will throw it back down to Ursula first.
For me, it's really just educating our students. I remember having a conversation about facial recognition with my high schoolers last year, and surprisingly, the younger students are not as concerned about their data and privacy as maybe you and I. And so helping them to kind of see the implications of what artificial intelligence and facial recognition can be beneficial to them, but also hinder them, I think is just an important role. Just bringing awareness, educating my students, and making sure that they're kind of like engaged in the fight. So I was also the advisor of Black Student Union last year, and I thought about how that organization could potentially work with the African American students in our school, or even in the county, in terms of bringing awareness and kind of recruiting students to pursue this career path. So for me, bringing awareness through organizations, through after school clubs is something that we definitely need to do. Because of course, if you're not educated about something, if you have no idea about what's going on, then there's no way that you can get involved and really impact the situation. So again, just education, right? Guest speakers, partnerships with businesses, and making sure that our community is really, really aware of what is happening and how they can fight this kind of technology movement, or at least not fight it, ensure the accuracy of the programs that we're using, so that, you know, it's beneficial to us as possible. But, you know, whenever I share with my students, when we're talking about innovation and creativity, everything you create always has a negative connotation. Even if, you know, we don't mean it to, there's always negative impacts on society from everything that we innovate. So even getting our students to think about, okay, if I'm going to create this, here's how it would positively impact us and how it would negatively impact us, and how can we kind of address those issues that we're already seeing on the negative side when we are initially, right, building up this innovative solution. So education, that's my go-to every time. Without it, you will be left behind, uninformed, and probably negatively impacted by the new technology if you're just not aware of everything it can do.
And Crystal, what are your thoughts as an educator with mathematicians or emerging mathematicians?
Specifically in teaching statistics, you know, the number one, the fundamental concept of statistics is figuring out how to choose your sample. And your sample should always represent your population of interest. And so that's something like I always like just nail into my students' heads. And, you know, when we talk about collecting data, making sure that data that you collect is not just reflective of the times, but reflective of the direction that we are trying to move our society in. I remember, you know, watching in the documentary where they talked about, you know, basically they gave the machines or the computers a lot of data, and from there they were able to recognize patterns in the data and then, you know, use that to make decisions. But, you know, oftentimes that data is very biased, especially, you know, when you talk about things like, you know, just thinking financially, you know, home loans, I don't know, credit cards, things of that nature. When we talk about those issues, that could lead, that often leaves minority groups out of the equation. So just from an educator's perspective, just always ingraining in my students' heads just the power of data and the power of using that data to make informed decisions. But in order to make great decisions, you have to have good data, and the data needs to be, reflective of what, it needs to be reflective of your interests. And then on the other side, in terms of education, I see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to, once again, just like Ursula was saying, educate students of this career path. At Nevada State College, we just created a data science program. So students will be able to receive a BA or a BS degree in data science. And we are a minority serving institution. So we are definitely working to try to get those voices in the room or get those people at the table, so that they can, contribute to this community. And so, but it starts so much, that's why I appreciate Ursula, because it starts it starts way further back than college. You have to get this in front of elementary school kids, middle school kids, high school kids, and give them that good foundation so that when they get to college, they can feel confident in pursuing these types of degrees, and then, go from there. So.
And Miranda, the frontline tech worker.
My mind is just going all over the place and hearing the different input, which is, I absolutely agree. Education, learning, becoming aware, knowledge, it in the schools for our youth, our future is absolutely imperative, because we're shaping whatever the next great technology may be in our youth. Specific to AI, the first thing that comes to mind when Dr. Krystle was saying data, that's what AI is. It's an abundance of data that is shaped around to understand what is going on and what is from that data. And that's where AI is formed, and the output, that's what it gives off, is just massaging and looking at the data that it's fed. The more the data, supposedly the more intelligent or accurate the output is. But here's a funny thing for you. Yes, we're talking about visual artificial intelligence as we're walking down the street. But guess what? Who has a smartphone and uses facial recognition? Mm-hmm. Guess who uses Google and keystrokes that are recorded? Mm-hmm. All of those things, taking pictures, once it enters cyberspace, it never goes away. So things of that nature that we do for fun, that are for pleasure, that are for making our lives easier in steps, that is a great thing. However, all of that data is fed into something else, whether it's artificial intelligence or some other type of product, to continue the thirst, to continue the wanting of something that makes your life easier, or something that looks cool or you would want to do. So for me, when I see that, me walking down the street, I don't hide, because I can't hide, because that's one point of entry. There are 1,000 other points of entry. The best thing, again, is educating ourselves as adults, as children, as persons that interact on the web and internet. Be as knowledgeable and cognizant of your actions as possible. Then be an advocate for protection of our rights, be an advocate for speaking up for what we feel how this should be handled. Similar to what the foundation of this video, the documentary, is all about. It takes legislation, it takes lobbying, it takes executives and companies, it takes the startups, it takes our future programmers to be responsible in their actions, so that we won't be, as Black, in the Black community, our Black men, our Black women, so we won't have such an impactful additional way to be identified in a negative manner falsely. So it definitely starts with education for everyone. Become aware of what you're doing with any piece of technology, and be outspoken about what you feel is right, and be ethical about it. We all have that power arm to flex.
I would say one thing that struck me is that, yes, I absolutely agree with all three of you. Education, advocacy is important, but there's a level of ethics and responsibility which are not being met in the AI community, and I would say even technology in general. And one good example was a few years ago when a researcher just plugged in Black girls and Asian girls into Google. What popped up were prostitutes. That was an input, to use the lingo, problem by the program, which was programmed obviously by someone with extreme bias, right? So while it's true, individually, we should be responsible, also recognize there's some level of over surveillance that's just going to take place once we've all sort of agreed to these technology things. Miranda, like you said, with the phone recognition, with your face, with your finger, all those sort of things. But I also think it's really important for us to call the tech companies to the table and call them out and state, you wouldn't have had that problem if you had women in the coding. You wouldn't have had that problem with most of the problems that you're coming up with, which is because they're not culturally responsive. In fact, they're racist and they're sexist. They're misogynist, right? Because of a lack of, and I don't like to use the word diversity, but I'd like to use, I'd like to think that technology needs to reflect the global community. So when I saw this AI film, I thought it was amazing, but I also thought, what if AI were flipped into a different space as far as the programmers? What if AI was in Africa? What would happen with the input of the visuals that went into framing the information that was used for recognition? What if it was done with majority women, right? What if we just flipped the script? And that says it all to me, that if we did that, and I'm not a technology person, but I would bet we would get a different end result, right? So there is real problems with the technology and sort of the way it is infiltrated all aspects of our life, right? You used to have to be able to use a phone by going home, or you finding a phone booth and then intentionally getting on a phone and making a phone call. And before there was, the ability to leave a message, you had to actually catch that person. Otherwise, it was just what it was. And now we know that that is not the case. We all walk around with phones. We are all 100% accessible. We don't even use phones in many cases to make phone calls. We text because we want an immediate response, right? So technology is moving fast. It's quick. I see that. We're all privy to that. But I also think there's a level of responsibility that we as a society, we as a community, a global community must have, because I think of the next generation. And in some ways, I believe one of you said, it's the input, it's the coding, And then there's more coding. I think it was you, Miranda, that is built from the original coding. So then it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing unless we put a real cap on it and say, how do we want this to work for us in a way that is inclusive of all of us and treats us all fairly? Because we already know that there's systems, the financial system, the educational system, which aren't equal. And so if AI is being used to support and in many ways drive those unequal systems, it's just going to continue. And here is a moment where we can actually say systems are broken, but the tools that we're going to use moving forward are not going to be built on those broken systems. So that's another thought that I had. I don't know if any of you had anything to sort of respond to that.
I would like to piggyback on that, if I may, to add to that. I absolutely agree. Diversity is diversity and how these programs or what is being done is absolutely imperative for empathy, for understanding, for a wider breadth of input. And it's definitely something. You look in technology and the least person you see is a Black woman. However, one of the things that that's a completely separate whole, conversation with wine type of a thing. But for looking at AI, I agreed. We have to be responsible in the data we're selecting that builds it. AI does not have feelings. It is not a person. It does not think and does not have the same synapses as a human being. It takes what we feed it. If we feed it hate, it will do nothing but respond in a negative manner and in hate, excuse me, towards that target. We have to be mindful of the data we pull, how it's learning, excuse me, and as you were saying, how it's being built out and applied, because it's impacting everyone's day-to-day lives.
Certainly is. I'm going to take one of the questions from the audience at this time. AI provides opportunities for scalability on improving outcomes, but as we learned from the program, flaws and biases can unfortunately also be scaled. How do you suggest we ethically move forward with the use of technology while being mindful of the possibility that they can perpetuate disparities? We touched on that a little bit, but I think it's the ethical part that we might want to take a moment to dig a little deeper into, if one of you wants to think about, like, what is, when we think of ethics, right? It is based on a fundamental principle of fairness and thinking about what is for the good, right? And so how would we ethically move forward at this point? Do you think knowing the flaws, knowing the problem, and as you all pointed out, knowing the tremendous impacts, negative impacts that it has? It's not just neutral, bad, it actually has negative ramifications for a good number of people. So ethically, what do? Do we take a pause? Do we convene an ethical panel to sort of create some sort of umbrella idea of what ethics and AI means? Do we speak to the youth and reach out to them and ask them? They may have a much better idea than we do, since they're going to inherit what's being created.
I'm happy to start again or speak again. For the company, the large tech company that I work for, there are likely minimal locations where you do not find our technology. Ethics is absolutely on. We absolutely bear the weight of needing to be ethical in our technology and our path as a company. One of the things I can proudly say for the company I work for, I'm very happy that we are taking an ethical approach. We are moving legislature to have it more monitored and regulated. We are moving forward and not choosing to not participate in certain technology efforts that would be intrusive to someone's life or would be considered by the opposite side of the gamut of something that is being intrusive or not ethical into my own life. I know historically, even within the documentary, it mentions a number of the six, I think it was 6 or 9 large tech companies that are driving AI. I want to note there's a lot of good that comes out of AI. There's a lot of good that comes in how AI is being used. And unfortunately, yes, the negative exists, but there is a lot of growth. There's a lot of benefit. There's a number of use cases where AI absolutely catapults us into a healthier and more prosperous as individuals in our everyday lives, as well as the companies, understood. But there's a lot of good that comes from it as well. So I don't want to be that person in technology and just shine a dark light, because there's both sides. But being responsible as a large tech company, as a startup, as a coder, it goes down to the coder and what we're creating and how it's coded. There just needs to be the accountability that comes from legislation, that comes from our executives. I'm very proud of our CEO, who is making sure ethics is embedded and ingrained into our daily work and the outcomes. And it shows through what we do and do not participate in overall in technology and our steps that we take.
Well, I'm glad to hear that your company is definitely taking into consideration the ethical implications of the work that is being done and the products that are being developed. What do you two think, Crystal and Ursula, about this question about ethics?
Well, for me, when I hear Miranda talk about the committees and things as such that are being set up by companies to kind of guide them throughout their process, I think of the data sets that we're talking about that are creating the bias, right? So oftentimes when we put those ethical committees together, they're oftentimes made up of like-minded individuals. And so ensuring that you have all different types of input from all different types of people, I think is very, very important in terms of making ethical decisions. Like for me, there have been times where, like when Google Maps sent me my overview of where I had been for the entire year, I tried to go through and turn off my location settings so that it couldn't track me. However, when I did that, none of the other apps on my phone would work, right? And so is that ethical, right? So if I don't choose to be tracked, right, then I can't use this app for whatever purpose. So, but then for somebody else, you know, my age, African-American, they may not mind being tracked through the Google Maps, right? And having to have their location on to access different apps. So I think that just making sure when we're creating these ethical communities that we are committees, that we have representation from all different types of people. I think that's just extremely important. And I think the question is, how do we get there? So how do we ensure that we have students, teachers, parents, business leaders, and different types of people that are invited to these committees to kind of share their thoughts? So I think just a coming together of community and businesses is important. And you know, as a teacher, I reach out to big business all the time, trying to get them to come and talk to my students, give them some more insight as to what this position or this job would look like in the future. So big tech companies, reach out to the schools around you, right? Knock on the doors of some of the schools and say, hey, we're putting together this ethical committee about AI and facial recognition. And we would love for you and some of your students, some of your parents to come in and give their input on what this should look like. And I think there's not enough of that. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the issues that we're seeing in AI and facial recognition.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Outreach is necessary. Also inclusiveness. And then also when we talk about data, having people in the room that can give context to some of this data. because you can have a data set that shows that a certain percentage of African Americans, defaulted on their loans, and a high percentage of African Americans defaulted on their loans in 2008. But without giving the context, without giving the history of redlining, and the practices that the banks were engaging in, one could easily feed the computers this information that would categorize these groups as high risk. So yeah, outreach is necessary to definitely be able to provide context for the data. And then, like you said, just having as many perspectives in the room as possible, so that we can make sure that we get all viewpoints and all possibilities of what this technology could produce, so we can get that outlook. When I think about it, I'm thinking of the documentary that was done on social media, and how when they created social media, they were not aware of like the self-esteem issues and the social media addiction that could happen as a result of getting likes. And when you get a certain number of likes, that releases endorphins, and then so now people start developing an addiction to that, and they start doing all kind of crazy things. So just, it takes more than just a small committee. It takes like a room of experts, psychologists, people dealing with social justice, just a wider variety. We of course, companies, these large companies, we have these, the diversity or the ethics committees, which is probably a group of very well-meaning individuals. But oftentimes these small groups of people or these committees of people could very well miss those big items, simply just because that's just not something that's on their mind. That's not something that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it just needs to be a wider scope of individuals that could provide all the different types of perspectives on this. And yeah.
Wow. Again, I agree with all three of you. And to piggyback on something you said, Crystal, there are medical ethicists, like it's an entire field, right? And so I'm not sure if they're tech ethicists in the same way. And I would encourage tech companies to have an in-house ethicist to deal with exactly what Crystal said, which is emerging technology. And since the technology is not sort of done in a vacuum and has implications much further and deeper, as Crystal said, which has to do with the emotional, the psychological, we've talked about the larger societal implications with finances and access to jobs, et cetera. I think we're in a new world, and we need to sort of shift accordingly. Medical ethicists did not just spring up. They came about because there were so many egregious things that were taking place in the medical field that institutions recognized they needed someone with the experience, whose vision is from a particular focus for the good of the institution and the good of the people who work there and receive services. So, and this is not something that I'm aware of, but that, it seems to me, should be the way that technology companies address all emerging technology, because as you all pointed out, we're just going through it, right, and moving, but there are major implications on so many levels. Which actually leads to the next question. But before we do that, I do want to just acknowledge Noelle Silver was supposed to join us today. And just briefly, she recently was awarded the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award for artificial intelligence, and she was called away to do something for work. So hopefully she is here with us in spirit and putting up the good fight for us along these lines. So I just want to say she is missed, and if she does pop in, we will definitely give her some time. With that, I just want to go to the next question, which is, I'm reading the question. I also feel we should address how algorithms are biased towards people who aren't conventionally attractive or whose features don't fit Eurocentric beauty standards. TikTok app has admitted to being guilty of this. I feel it ruins the confidence of a lot of young people who use this particular app. This documentary was very interesting. Any thoughts, any of you?
It is unfortunate that it takes moments like these to, in the documentary and in our conversation, to float up, tell on, make visible to some of these extremely popular tools or games, and really putting them on Front Street of what they're doing. And it's really disheartening for within technology to know that these type of things happen. And being a minority in technology, in a huge company that is like the others like many others working to change our dynamic, but we have so many years to make up for that. We yet have so much to go. So it's really disheartening to see companies like TikTok that are such a rave. They came in fast and furious in the technology, social media arena. And it's just not being fair to its users. It's not being fair to the end user, to the consumers. And again, it goes back to we as individuals, we don't have to work for big tech to hold these companies accountable. Facebook has been in through so many charges, court filings, et cetera, because of actions they've taken and people standing up to them and saying, no, this is not a monopoly. No, this is not fair. No, this is not how you should operate. Selling of people's information without even knowing it. It's in that small fine print. These, again, are things that I hate. It takes these type of documentaries to really make it more public, that it's what is actually happening. It's almost a default at this point that something is happening with one of the tools, at least, that you're using, but it's up to us to become aware and do something about it.
For me, when I think about our young people having issues with how they look, I think of how can we build self-love and care into our curriculum in our schools. So we know this is what the technology is supposed to do, but how can we create and embed this self-love, this self-care piece into our tech initiatives? And so just making sure that we are educating the whole child and that we're making sure that, you know, you are beautiful, you are smart, you are loved, and you're just using this TikTok for information or entertainment or whatever, but this does not define you, right? This is not who you are. And so I think as an educator, that's always a big piece of what I do is you are great and you are worthy of everything, right? Outside of Facebook and TikTok and things of those nature. So just building up our kids and just making sure that the whole child is educated, I think will help and definitely decrease the amount of the students or young people that are negatively impacted by the technology.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's just like the saying, you know, use social media, don't let it use you. So teaching our youth how to responsibly use social media. But yeah, I mean, I agree with the TikTok thing because I've seen a lot of videos. You know, TikTok is just one of those apps where you get sucked in. And I've seen quite a few of the videos calling TikTok out on, you know, their bias towards certain people. You have one person over here who looks a certain way, and they're getting all the praise, all the views, meaning probably because TikTok is putting that person's videos in everyone's feed. So they're getting all the likes. And then you have a person over here who is often actually the originator of that content who, you know, is barely getting recognized. So, you know, that definitely is on the companies. And I've seen people call TikTok out, but that is a good question. I mean, how on a larger scale can we really, you know, make these companies listen? I mean, one thing is just to boycott. I mean, I think you taking away our usage when we see, you know, when a certain group of people sees that their talents or they're not being recognized on a particular app, we you know, take our usage away from that app. Now, of course, that requires a lot of community effort and engagement among certain groups of people. But I mean, that's how you really evoke change. You know, when people start to see that their ratings, that their usage is going down, that's when they'll really listen. Because when the ratings and the usage is going down, that's when you're affecting the money. And I mean, at the end of the day, America, we live in a capitalist society. Money talks, and that's really the way to get these large companies to listen. But of course, it's one of those things where it's easier said than done. But yeah.
Well, just briefly, I want to circle back to what I mentioned before about here in Vegas, just an incident with AI being used with Metro Police, and Vice did the report, the article, and indicated that, you know, someone was arrested and that it was not even a real match for who the real person was. It was a mistake by the AI. And that's a little concerning. I mean, we know that it happens, but the reason it was most concerning is in the context of this wonderful video. It was a white man that actually had this happen to him. So I can only imagine how many more times that has happened to people in communities of color. One of the things that I think is important for us to recognize is, as Ursula said, we really don't have as much control as we would like to have. And I think that that is part of where we should be having real policy, as Miranda mentioned, real policy discussions. Europe has instituted stricter guidelines and policies regarding the use of information by tech companies and how they are to interact with their consumers. And so they're a little ahead of us. I mean, I know we are the leader in technology and innovation. And so it's kind of like we want to encourage that. But at the same time, I think it is important to look at our civil liberties, look at what our country is founded on, which is the right to be autonomous, the right to be treated equally, the right to be respected by companies, by our government, by our neighbors. And if we are creating technology that is to be used by us, because AI is a tool that is to be used by us, then I would just throw out there that it's really important that we do more than just talk. A couple of things I do want to note that in the film and in general, there are organizations that are doing advocacy around this. There is Blacks in AI, and there is another organization of which I just blanked on, which was mentioned. And of course, there were other ones such as the ACLU and some other ones that were mentioned. But I do want to say there is some hope that there is going to be some real guidance and some real sort of framing and policy as we move forward on this topic. There is a great question that I want to read, which is, during COVID, many professors use programs that via cameras watch the students while they take a class. The professors say it is to stop cheating, but the companies own the videos of us and can sell them to a third party. What should students do to fight the intrusion? They need to take this test, but they obviously don't want the intrusion of them, their wherever they are, their lives, being kept and being used by a potential third party. So what I would envision is, if I had my students doing a virtual class and they are taking this test, then they have to turn on the camera to affirm that it is them that is taking the test, right, while they're taking this test. And then it seems to me, what I'm reading and what I can see potentially happening is the company that has that video could say, okay, we would like to promote our tool, and we are going to give it to a media company who's going to make a commercial using Ursula, Miranda, and Krystle's image. And so what would you all recommend that students advocate to change, both from the tech perspective and also from the university perspective? What agreements should be put in place for that sort of usage? What would you recommend?
I think for me, I would recommend options. So there's some students that would be completely fine with turning their camera on and, you know, being recorded, but there's some students that are not. So what are some other ways that we can ensure that this is indeed the student that is testing today? Mm-hmm. And I think that would help alleviate some of those issues. And then also just being transparent with our students and families and saying, hey, you know, we may do this with this video, right? And so if you choose to record yourself, here are some of the implications of what might happen. So just options. I prefer options myself, you know, three to five things I can choose from that best suits me and my family. And I think that would be a great avenue to take in regards to this issue.
I absolutely agree with that full-fledged. What Ursula just shared, it's understanding that there's two sides to that coin. One, I would, as a parent or the school, be aware of what is involved when you sign those contracts. Right. And as a parent, make sure I'm aware of what are you doing with the data that you're storing. The dollar is in the data and who owns it. In the sense of they can't do you if they, it depends on who owns it, what they're trying to do. But coming back, then presenting the school district, presenting the teacher, or asking as a parent for options, because that is a real thing. That's a real concern and possibility that can happen, unfortunately.
Well, let me be clear. It's not children in K through 12, because there's a whole bunch of other liability issues with taking the images of children. It's at the university level, which is still an unequal playing field for students, but they are 99.9% of the time adults. So I think it's really definitely important that students advocate that universities not sign contracts with those sort of companies, as you said.
Or it's in the negotiations of it, but changing the context slightly, then it's still a matter of that student as an adult having a say, and please provide me another option of how we can still come to the same goal, how we can still accomplish this, because whatever my reasoning is, and partnering with your institution or your teacher in doing so, you absolutely should have that right. But it's a matter of speaking up and saying something.
And I'm not sure but I do believe there have been some boards, professional boards that have used the same type of system. In other words, you're going to be a massage therapist, and normally you would take a particularly a proctored exam, right, where you're bringing the ID, you're doing all that stuff. But this way, of course, it allows folks to be able to do their tests at the time that makes sense to them, et cetera. So there's that plus. But then the downside is, of course, that you're being recorded taking an exam, which but now there's this record, right?
Who
Forever.
owns the information once it's recorded? What happens to that information once it's recorded and we're all done and I passed my exam or my whatever, it's ended. Now what happens to that information? Absolutely.
And this might be a good, yeah, this might be a good thing for students to rally behind, right? Like this is one system of AI, because it's facial recognition, I'm sure that's being used, that is within an institution and students may have the ability to help those institutions negotiate for protecting their rights, as opposed to looking at it just from the perspective of the company. I'm sorry, Crystal, I cut you off.
No, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the institution that needs to advocate on the students' behalf, and having those student voices in the room so that they can be aware of these issues is important. I know as an instructor, that is something that I didn't want to do. We have a system that we used, a proctoring system that we used for our exams. And last semester, I just decided not to use it. I just felt like it was just so intrusive and I want to trust the students. But this semester, not only do I have evidence that the students some of the students cheated, but also, I got an anonymous tip from one of my students that another, student was bragging about, oh, why are you guys studying? I didn't even take the exam, just pay somebody to take the exam. And so at that point, I felt my hand was forced. And so it's one of those things where, in order to maintain equity in your classroom, it's kind of one of those like necessary evils. But it's up to the institution to, they're the body that picks the system, and they're the ones who negotiate with the company when they decide that they're going to use it. So they have to advocate on the students' behalf.
And to follow up on this, as someone brought up a very good point, one of the downsides during COVID, some adult students have their children home with them, and the children come into the room and the student is cut off from the test because it's a violation, right? And they're recording the child. There's so many levels here. And I think this is a really good pathway to really build some momentum, both from, the community perspective, student perspective, but this is where there's institutions in our community where we can actually make a difference, right? I teach at UNLV, Crystal, you're at Nevada State, College of Southern Nevada is huge. These are 3 institutions that touch the lives of most people in this community in some way. And even if you're not a student or never even stepped foot on the campus, you know somebody who's being forced to take a test, just as Crystal students now are, basically because too many broke the honor system that she had established. And in order to make sure that everybody has, as you said, a fair and equitable grading outcome, it's important that everybody is held to the same level of standard, right? So perhaps this is something that we can get momentum on. Again, the other large institution that does use the AI that is definitely impacting all of us is Metro Police Department. And in our unique space and as the entertainment capital, as a tourist destination, and in some ways is even more troubling, because I'm not quite sure who they're sharing their information with, but I'm sure they're sharing that information with other law enforcement agencies here and abroad. And so there's many implications for all of the misidentification that goes into the system and then becomes a part of that data, as the three of you keep saying. And then, lo and behold, you can't get on an airplane because of something you did in Vegas, which actually was not even you, but now the system has misidentified you. So there's a lot there, but definitely I think the testing and the impact on that collection of those images is real, and maybe even something that can get momentum on. Any other thoughts on even just that, which is a whole big thing in and of itself?
Usage of AI in other states through law enforcement is very popular at this time, and you hear more about it in the news and through research and such like that. I definitely want to say again, there are within technology, there definitely are learning curves. There are definitely areas for improvement. There have been some incredible wins. There have been some incredible oopses. And it comes down to how we take responsibility for what we are developing and growing. Because where AI is a topic today, there's going to be another topic just as big in the future. There's going to be something that's possibly infracting or imposing on our privacy in the future. Technology, and when it benefits us, we're cheerleaders. When it imposes or we feel we have a moment of imposition, we, rightfully so for both, there's not, you're not a happy person. So my final statement I would say is, it's like many other areas that need work, continue like a child, continue to need attention. Once upon a time in technology, they say, oh, every 6 months, there's something new. Yeah, almost every week to a month, there's something new in technology now, to your point, and it's moving fast. It's at an accelerated rate. And we all have a part in saying too much, pivot. It's not, technology, I would never encourage to stop, but pivot, change your course, rethink, give me other options. I was one of those students who took a proctor exam. I took a tech certification exam, and I had to make everything white in the room, and I had to give them a full 360 of the room. Where I understand that element, we need to come up with other options and figure out things. I know COVID put us in a really big different and new and unknown, uncharted position, but we need to we need to be more creative, and we need to come up with other options. And we, in everyday lives, we need to hold those companies that are driving that accountable.
I have a question that's kind of following up on something one of you said. I'm curious about the comment about surveillance in Las Vegas. Does it go beyond the casino, i.e. looking for quote unquote blacklisted gamblers? And would that make visitors more wary if they know they're being watched? And I'm not sure, Miranda, if you were the one who mentioned it or not.
I did not mention specifically in that context. However, I know it is used as far as following potential consumers to retailers, and similar to walking by a certain store you shopped at before, and you start seeing ads for that retail store while you're in the vicinity. Similar to the Alexa, the Google Home, et cetera. And what I think Dr. Krystle mentioned earlier is you mentioned something, then all of a sudden it's coming up in your threads. that does exist. That's been around for quite some time. I don't know how it's in use I can't speak to how it's in use today as far as searching out potential gamblers. I know for Nevada specifically, there is the gaming board that partners with identified persons who may need assistance or step away from gambling. However, I'm not familiar directly with technology that is applied there. But for geo sites and shopping, I know historically it definitely has been.
So did anybody else catch in the video in Hong Kong some of the ways that the protesters were pushing back the gas mask? I think I might be walking with an umbrella everywhere from now on. Are there any ways that you think you might change your own behavior based on this very informative film, excuse me? Any ways you think you might change your own behavior or some of the things you might want to do a little differently?
I think for me, it's kind of, how do you escape it? So I don't know how many of you all have shopped at Walmart or have been to Walmart recently, but when you're in the self-checkout line, there's a camera that is facing the line. And if you look up at the TV, every person that's in the line has a yellow box around their face, and they're taking pictures of your face right at Walmart. And so right now the law is, if you shop at my store, I have the right to record you, take pictures of your face and such, and do such things like that, right? So I think being aware of the companies that are doing that and what and trying to figure out what they're actually doing with those pictures that they're taking of your face. And then once you figure that out, making the decision if you want to continue to shop there or not is one place that we all can start. But I know for certain that Walmart does it in the checkout line. You just look up at the TV and it's just taking pictures of everybody's face right in the line. So
is there signage that says outside the store? So there's no there. So the agreement is, as a customer, when you walk in, basically we own your image. Right. We have the right to record you buying the miscellaneous things that you're buying, not just tracking your credit card or your ATM card. Now it is, this is what we're going to do. You don't even get a notice, you know, like when you walk in certain places and it says, beware that we are filming, right? And you go, I don't quite look that good today. So I'm not really trying to go in there and be filmed, or for whatever reason, you don't want to be filmed. So, you know, speaking again to what maybe we might want to do as individuals, as a collective community body, is not just put tech companies on call, but basically universally AI, if it's being used in other similar sorts of technology, there really needs to be some privacy and guidelines and transparency that is given to us as consumers and as citizens within a community. And that's something that is very, very troubling to hear. And I know it's not just Walmart, it's probably 1,000 other stores. Go ahead, Crystal.
No, I'm sorry. That's what I was just gonna say, and that's the thing. Where you say you're not gonna shop at Walmart, and then you start shopping at Winco, and then now Winco has it, and then it's like sometimes, you know, sometimes you just feel powerless sometimes because, you know, when these big companies decide to do things, it's just like the little person fighting against the big organization, and sometimes you do feel kind of helpless, or sometimes you do say things like, oh, well, maybe I might just decide to leave my cell phone at home. And then you go somewhere without your cell phone and you feel like completely naked. And then you say, I'm not ever gonna do that again, you know? So it's almost like sometimes you even say you're going to change your behavior, but our society has, you know, seemingly become so dependent upon these technologies that it really is hard to escape it. And I don't know, that I would I would be open to suggestions.
Well, I personally try not to take my cell phone in stores. Little weird thing that I do.
Okay.
However, I will testify. It's really, really hard. And just, all of you who know me know that I have this little thing where soy chai tea from Starbucks. And so the easiest way to pay at Starbucks is with your cell phone, right? Especially since I have a vintage Starbucks card that doesn't run through. So therefore, default is I have to take my cell phone there. But I try not to be completely attached. But if something goes wrong in the store, guess what's the first thing they say? Text, email, pull up the app, whatever it is, right? Like their default is not like customer service, let's resolve it. It's you, the customer, you figure it out and work it out on the app. So it is hard. It's really hard. I don't even know. I know the last time I used cash was today, but I'm sure many of us who are watching are like, ooh, yeah, I really haven't used cash really in a couple of days or a week or two. So we are definitely highly dependent on cell phones, on credit cards, on technology in general. And so I think you're right, Crystal. It's really hard just to even pivot even for 24 hours or a week just to say, I'm just going to try and do a cold turkey.
Well, if I can add to that thought, where we're looking to make change, you in every click that you make, the tool or the hardware, the phone, your keyboard, that you make, be mindful of what you do. Because even if you leave your cell phone in the car, it already knows you're at Walmart. So it's just not knowing what you're buying unless you use your credit card or your debit card. Or you're in Walmart and it sees what you bought, like literally. So those digital footprints already exist. And that's where, as Dr. Krystle was saying, it becomes very hard, or how can you step away from it? I don't know if we can, but we absolutely can limit it and minimalize it. I have an email where if I'm shopping, I only use that email for shopping. But that's just me in my course of my process of how I try to guide that big profile in the sky that was mentioned in the movie, in the documentary, where everyone has a profile, different pieces, and some of them come together. Healthcare work, my doctor was able to get my information because everything is now digitalized per HIPAA, but HIPAA supposedly protects my information as well. So, I mean, I don't think you can get away from it. As many of our friends that want to and try to and fight it, kicking and screaming. But you can be mindful of how big of a footprint and how much you share based on what you do.
And Miranda, do you have any additional tips? Because as you were talking, I was also thinking about that social media documentary where a lot of the parents who work at these big social media companies, they don't allow their children to use social media because they kind of, they have insider information into what social media is really doing to our society. So, they've been able to really limit their children from engaging in it because they know the potential harms that it could cause. So
I don't have, unfortunately, any good insider information that I could share, could share even if I knew it, type of thing, or
yeah.
I don't have any. But what I would say as a foundation, if you don't want it known, don't put it in cyber, don't put it out there. And that includes text as well as pictures. Be mindful of the fun and really great innovations of home assistance, where you speak and your lights come on, etc. Anything is hackable, and it's always listening. It is always listening. And where you have passwords, that's the biggest thing that I laugh at. Be very mindful of the difficulty and sharing of any personal information. Hackers can pull all that information together to create a profile on you. COVID had a huge uptick in stealing of identities because people at home all over the globe, this is not just US, all over the globe, teenagers having nothing better to do but to hack and play. And as long as they have internet, if you're connected, they have access to you. So just be mindful of some of the basic things that you can control. It gets very annoying at times. It just does, because you want to live, you want to enjoy, you want to not have to think of these things, but they're real and they're real dangers. At Microsoft, we constantly are going through new and updated security training required to be aware of what's happening, to be aware of what we're doing to keep ourselves continuously aware. And those are just some easy baselines that we can put into place that help. Doing something is helpful.
Well, I'm hopeful because you engage with technology, knowing some of the bigger risks and some of the scarier things, Miranda. So I do appreciate you sharing, being mindful, being thoughtful, really thinking about security when you do engage. I like your tip, especially about if you're going to have a profile using your or shopping using your email, then have one solo email that you're using and not the one that you would normally use. And I'm sure there's a number of other things that we all just need to step up our game and think about, because there's so much, and it's, as we keep saying, it keeps changing rapidly. Time check. How about that? So it's been amazing. We do have a few minutes left. I do want you all to maybe think about how we can use this in the future, this particular film, Coded Bias, what we can do to support the organizations that are doing the work, or any other thoughts that you may have that this is brought up for you. There's probably a number of ways we could kind of go in this discussion, but I think we've touched on a number too, and I think it's been a really good discussion. So any other thoughts or concerns or any other things that we didn't bring up that come to mind? Or like I said, there was a really interesting things in that film that made me think about the difference in China when the young lady was walking through and everything was facial recognition, everything. And she was just pleased as punch that she could do it that way. And so I wonder also if it's our way of thinking in the United States that is going to become the minority way of thinking, and the rest of the world may be embracing AI a little more.
I would challenge those listening, anyone interested in tech, anyone interested in AI and what it does. Tech is an extremely broad term that covers so many areas that you can't even imagine. And and specifically for this context of conversation for AI, I look forward to seeing what type of developments our youth would create and design that is of a positive tone. This whole documentary started because she was creating something fun, something encouraging, something uplifting that she or other persons could use on a daily basis to start their day on the right foot. I would challenge those in tech. I would challenge those interested in tech. Learn more, see what positive impact you can make. I had a business, and my theme was the world is it's a world of infinite possibilities in tech. See what you would like to design. You don't have to be the coder, but create an idea, challenge yourself to be creative on how can tech be used in a positive manner to address some of these issues, or to change the concept and the path of AI.
My final thoughts for me, this year I've served as the president of the Computer Science Teacher Association for Nevada. And CSTA has a list of standards that can be taught K through 12. So I just want to kind of encourage parents and students to seek out those standards, especially parents. Those standards are supposed to be taught in K through 12 at every level, and just checking in on your kid's school and making sure that they are actually integrating those computer science standards, and seeing what you can do as a parent to make sure that your child is actually learning about tech and being immersed in those CSTA standards, so that if they choose to go into tech, they're prepared, they understand what they need, but just acknowledging that it starts early, right? And the earlier we can engage our students in technology, in computer science standards, the higher chance of them actually, going into that field and being productive. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, and so we see that we have resources locally, because I didn't even know that robotics was taught in the K through 12 school system. So now I know Ursula is involved with that, but the World Wide Web is a beautiful thing. So if anyone is interested, there are a lot of tutorials out there to teach you how to code and to teach you some of the fundamental information that you need to kind of get started, or to educate yourself on the possibilities of being involved in tech, and kind of learning the different routes that you can take. So
Microsoft has vowed to educate over 1 million people, and has released a platform that speaks on tech in every area for the entrepreneur, for someone interested in code, for someone interested in technology marketing. There are so many touch points. Check out LinkedIn and you will get free training.
Yeah, Miranda, a bunch of my students have actually taken advantage of that. It was under the old platform when it was called Linda, but there were some like aging things that happened in the past 2 years, but a really great resource for students to get certified in whatever they're interested in.
Lynda.com was its own platform for training, and it's partnered or come under LinkedIn. Yep, absolutely.
Great advice, great resources. I'm proud of us. As Crystal said, there's amazing things going on in this community. I did want to read a quote by Joy Buolamwini, who's the founder of Algorithms Justice League and the focus of the documentary, to sort of wind us out, if that's okay with you, unless any of you had something else to leave us with. Okay. If you're thinking about data and artificial intelligence, in many ways, data is destiny. Data is what we're using to teach machines how to learn different kinds of patterns. So if you have largely skewed data sets that are being used to train these systems, you can also have skewed results. So this is when you think of AI, it's forward-looking, but AI is based on data, and data is a reflection of our history. The past dwells within our algorithms. So there is possibilities to alter the future as long as we acknowledge the past and reckon with the challenges that it's brought us in our current use of AI. Those are my thoughts. Ladies, it's been an amazing conversation. I know we could go on and on and on. I'm sure that there are many hopeful things that come from this, ways for, as you said, Ursula, parents to check and encourage students to follow really rigorous guidelines. And I love what you had to say, Crystal, about statistics and populations and being mindful when thinking about doing the research and the data collection. And Definitely, Miranda. The last little gem that you shared is probably well worth this entire conversation, so that folks are able to walk away and know where they can actually learn about technology, as you said, the whole range of possibilities. So I do want to thank Vegas PBS. It's been, just as I said, a very rich and engaging discussion. I do want to thank you for allowing us this opportunity to look at coded bias in Women's History Month, thinking about the future, honoring those that have done the hard work in the past. And I'm going to ask that folks tune in to Vegas PBS for future conversations such as this. This is one of a series of many. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What an amazing discussion. Thank you all so much for being a part of this community conversation. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We hope you'll all help us spread the word about the broadcast of Coded Bias airing this Monday, March 22nd at 10 p.m. on Vegas PBS channel 10.1, or you can stream it on our website at vegaspbs.org. We also hope to see you at our next community screening on April 16th for Philly DA, a documentary series about a civil rights attorney, Larry Krasner, and his new position as District Attorney of Philadelphia. The documentary explores his first term as he and his team attempt to change the criminal justice system for the better. Thank you all again and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.